Welcome to Griffonomics, where we conduct financial investigations to define the risk before we look at the reward. Today, we're diving into Evolv Technology, trading under the ticker EVLV. Evolv is executing a deliberate, long-term pivot toward a hardware-enabled recurring revenue platform that prioritizes customer lifetime value over upfront hardware sales. However, this strategic shift creates a structural revenue-shaped tension in 2026 as the company trades immediate one-time product revenue for more durable, high-margin four-year subscription streams.
Yeah, and that tension is exactly why this is such a fascinating case study right now.
Right. I mean, we have a massive stack of materials sitting on the table between us today. We're talking Investor Day slide decks, the latest executive earnings transcripts, granular financial models, you name it.
Then strategic outlooks, all of it.
Exactly. And our goal for this deep dive is to conduct a really strict forensic audit of Evolv's business transition. But before we get into the heavy math, I want you, the listener, to just imagine a crisp Tuesday morning in mid-February.
Oh, man. Okay.
You are standing outside a massive suburban high school. It's, 38 degrees out. It is sleeting, and there are like 2,000 teenagers desperately trying to get through a single set of double doors before the 7:30 a.m. bell rings.
It sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It is. Every single one of them has to stop, take off their heavy winter coat, unpack a dense canvas backpack, take out their laptop, empty their pockets, and walk through a metal detector that looks like it was ripped straight out of a 1990s county courthouse.
Right, the classic single-file bottleneck.
Yeah, the line stretches out into the parking lot. The students are freezing, the administration is stressed, and most terrifyingly from a security standpoint, that massive bottleneck of frustrated, huddled students outside the building has just become a massive, highly vulnerable, soft target.
Which is the exact opposite of what the security is supposed to do.
Exactly. And today, we are looking at a company that is trying to eradicate that scenario completely. We want to know how a company building physical security gates is trying to turn itself into an invisible, AI-driven standard for public safety.
And really, for the allocator, we want to know if their decision to completely restructure their financials, sacrificing guaranteed cash today for subscriptions tomorrow, is a master stroke of corporate strategy or, well, a massive unforced error.
Right, because you don't just change your accounting for fun.
You definitely do not. And it is arguably one of the most fascinating corporate transitions happening in the public markets right now.
Yeah.
Because to truly grasp what is happening with the stock, and to understand why the executive team is perfectly fine with their revenue growth optically slowing down on paper this year, you have to understand the sheer scale of their ambition.
Right, they aren't just building a faster metal box.
Exactly. Evolv isn't just trying to sell a slightly faster metal detector. If that were the case, we wouldn't be doing this deep dive. They're actively trying to establish an entirely new asset class.
What the CEO calls the AI native security utility, right?
Yes. They want this technology to be as ubiquitous, as expected, and as utterly unnoticeable as the Wi-Fi network or the fire sprinklers in the building you're sitting in right now.
Which is a huge claim.
It is. But before we can even touch the accounting acrobatics they are pulling off in 2026, we have to audit the foundation. We have to audit the technology moat. Because, frankly, that moat is the only thing giving management the conviction to risk a short-term market panic.
Right, because you can't have a recurring software subscription if the physical hardware sitting in your front door is a piece of junk.
Exactly. If it doesn't work, they cancel.
If the gate doesn't catch the weapon, or, if it constantly alerts on harmless 3-ring binders, the customer cancels the contract and the entire financial model collapses. So let's open up the hood here.
Let's do it.
Evolv's investor materials constantly harp on this concept of the physical AI flywheel. They use the term so much it almost starts to sound like corporate buzzword bingo, honestly.
It really does.
So break this down for me. What are the actual mechanical variables behind this proprietary data advantage they claim to have?
Well, it's not just marketing speak. I mean, it is a very real 4-pillar, mutually reinforcing mechanism. If you look at slide 14 of their latest Investor Day deck, they map this out beautifully.
Okay, I have that pulled up.
So the first pillar is the hardware itself. Evolv utilizes 2 different types of active sensors. In their core product, the Express system, which is the dual-lane gate you walk through, they are using active sensors that generate specific multi-frequency electromagnetic fields.
So it's basically creating a magnetic bubble you walk through.
Basically, yeah. As you walk through, that field interacts with the objects on your person and the sensors capture the secondary signals bouncing back.
Wait, pause right there. Let's make sure we understand the physics here. How is that actually different from the old school metal detector at the airport that beeps every time I, forget to take off my belt?
So a traditional metal detector is incredibly dumb technology.
Like binary dumb.
Exactly. It is essentially just looking for electrical conductivity or magnetic permeability. It asks a binary question: is there metal passing through me?
And if yes, it beeps.
If yes, it beeps. It doesn't know if that metal is a steel belt buckle, an aluminum smartphone, or, a high-capacity firearm magazine. Evolv's active sensors, on the other hand, are capturing a much denser, three-dimensional physical signature of the object.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they are mapping its density, its specific shape profile, and its magnetic properties simultaneously.
Okay, that makes sense for the walkthrough gates. But I was reading through the Q1 2026 earnings transcript, and they spent a ton of time talking about this new product, the eXpedite bag scanner.
Oh yeah, the bag scanner's huge.
And that's a totally different physical mechanism, right?
Correct. The eXpedite system represents the second half of that hardware pillar. Instead of electromagnetic fields, eXpedite uses raw, dual-energy X-ray channels.
Dual energy X-ray.
Now, this is a massive leap forward. A standard X-ray just gives you a flat image based on density. But dual-energy X-ray uses two distinct X-ray spectrums, high energy and low energy.
Let me guess. That allows them to tell what the material is actually made of, not just how thick it is.
You nailed it. It measures how different materials absorb those two different energy levels.
That is wild.
By comparing the absorption rates, the system can determine the atomic number of the material. It instantly separates organic materials, like a leather bag or an apple, from inorganic materials, like metals, plastics, and glass.
So the hardware pillar is capturing either complex electromagnetic signatures or precise atomic level X-ray data.
Exactly. Which brings us to the second pillar of the flywheel, which is the data itself.
And looking at the numbers in this stack of research, the scale is genuinely hard to wrap your head around. They currently have over 9,000 active units deployed globally.
Spread across more than 1,300 unique customers.
Right. And because these systems are designed for high-flow environments, those 9,000 units are generating more than 4 million real-world scans every single day.
Yeah, to put that in perspective, every time someone walks through an express gate with their keys, their phone, their umbrella, their laptop, or unfortunately a concealed weapon, that physical signature is captured.
And logged into the system.
Exactly. Since Evolv launched, they have processed over 4.5 billion tagged threats and benign objects. This isn't theoretical data generated in a lab.
It's 4.5 billion instances of messy, complex, real-world human behavior.
Precisely. And that massive pile of data is the fuel for the third pillar, the algorithms.
And this is where I start to draw parallels to the truly durable tech giants we cover on this show, companies like Apple or NVIDIA.
Oh, absolutely. The hardware-software fusion.
Exactly. Evolv isn't taking a legacy X-ray machine and just paying a third-party software vendor to bolt a generic computer vision program onto it. The hardware and the software are completely inextricably fused.
And that fusion is the core of their intellectual property. The algorithms are running real-time physics-based AI. Remember those legacy X-ray machines you see at a concert venue?
With the screens that look like a weird neon painting?
Yes. They produce what are called pseudo-color images. They are artificially colored to make it easier for a human guard to look at the screen and try to decipher if a jumbled mess of wires is a laptop charger or an explosive device.
So the whole system is built around human eyesight.
Exactly. And humans suffer from cognitive fatigue. After staring at that screen for 3 hours, the guard's error rate skyrockets.
But Evolv's system isn't building images for human eyes at all, is it?
Not at all. Evolv's native AI ingests the dense, raw data streams, the multi-frequency electromagnetic data, or the dual-energy atomic numbers, purely for machine processing. The machine is making the decision.
Right.
It cross-references that incoming live signature against its trained neural network of 4.5 billion past scans, and it has to differentiate a dense, ruggedized Chromebook from a concealed 9mm handgun.
And it has to do that instantly.
In less than a quarter of a second, so the person doesn't even have to break their stride.
Which perfectly sets up the fourth pillar, the software infrastructure, or the MLOS, machine learning operations loop.
Yeah, the cloud connectivity.
Right, because Evolv connects this entire fleet of 9,000 units via high-speed LTE networks back to an AWS-hosted cloud platform.
Yes. So imagine a unit in a hospital in Ohio encounters a completely new type of benign item, say, a newly manufactured, strangely shaped titanium medical implant,
Okay.
and the system flags it as a threat. The security guard physically verifies it's just a medical device and tags it in the system as a false positive.
Got it.
That specific physical signature is uploaded to Evolv's cloud. Their centralized data science team analyzes it, refines the neural network to recognize that specific titanium shape as benign, and then pushes an over-the-air software update to all 9,000 units globally.
So by the next morning, a unit at a stadium in London knows how to ignore that exact same medical implant.
Exactly. That centralized model improvement loop is what makes the Moat so defensible. This system literally gets smarter every single day it is plugged in.
That is a phenomenal breakdown of the mechanics. Now let's take all of that deep tech and drop it directly into the real world. Earlier, I asked you to imagine the freezing high school students lined up outside.
For 15-minute bell pressure.
Right. I want to spend some time on this because education represents 35% of Evolv's entire business. The source materials use a brilliant phrase for this: the protection paradox.
It's the central dilemma of modern public safety. How do you implement robust, high-security screening without turning a school into a prison and without creating massive bottlenecks that ironically introduce entirely new security vulnerabilities?
Like having 2,000 kids gathered in the parking lot.
Exactly. That high school morning rush hour you described is known in the industry as the 15-minute bell pressure. It is the ultimate stress test for any physical infrastructure.
Right, because if you use traditional metal detectors, the math simply doesn't work.
No, the throughput is terrible.
Yeah, a standard metal detector can process maybe 200 to 300 people an hour, assuming everyone is perfectly emptying their pockets and placing their bags on a table. If you have 2,000 students in 15 minutes, you either need a dozen machines and a dozen guards, which schools cannot afford.
Or you force the students to wait in line outside for 45 minutes.
Exactly. Now, Evolv claims their express system can process up to 4,000 people an hour. They solve the bell pressure. But how does it actually look to the student? Like, how do you process that many people without the line stopping every 2 seconds?
It comes down to their user interface, specifically what they call red box technology.
Red box. Okay, walk me through that.
Because the AI is targeting the specific physical signature of the threat and not the person themselves, the default state of the gate is continuous flow.
So you don't stop.
You just walk through with your backpack on, your phone in your pocket, your keys in your hand. If the AI detects a threat signature, it doesn't just blare a loud generic alarm that stops everything.
And causes a massive scene in the middle of the hallway.
Exactly. Instead, the security staff standing nearby are holding a connected tablet. On that tablet, they see an optical camera image of the person who just walked through, overlaid with a distinct visual red box pinpointing the precise location of the anomaly.
Oh, that's clever.
Yeah, it might be a box over their left ankle or a box over the front pocket of their backpack. The guard can simply ask the student to step aside to a secondary screening table and say, "Hey, can I see what's in your left ankle pocket?"
While the rest of the line just keeps going.
The rest of the line never stops moving.
I mean, there is a massive psychological component to that, which I think Wall Street analysts might miss when they're just looking at spreadsheets.
Oh, it changes the entire vibe of the building.
Yeah, it restores a sense of dignity. These kids aren't being treated like criminal suspects the moment they arrive to learn algebra. And there is an ethical, objective layer here, too.
How so?
Well, because the machine is doing the heavy lifting based purely on the physical mass, density, and shape of the objects, it completely removes human profiling from the primary screening process.
Oh, I see what you mean.
The machine doesn't care about your demographic. It only cares about the physics of the metal in your pocket. It severely limits the potential for implicit bias.
Right. It's an objective physical audit rather than a subjective human assessment. And that combination, solving the bell pressure while maintaining student dignity, is why the technology is scaling so rapidly. But there is another massive macro-level catalyst we have to discuss to fully understand this moat.
Let me guess, the government certification.
Yes. Evolv didn't just build a good product, they effectively secured a golden ticket from the federal government.
You're talking about the recent DHS designation. So I was reading through the strategic Outlook memo from last month, and there was a press release buried in there about the U.S. Department of Homeland Security granting the SAFETY Act designation to the new eXpedite bag scanner.
Right, joining the Express system, which already had it.
Now, I know their core Express system already had this designation, but for the listener who, doesn't work in corporate procurement or government contracting, what does this actually mean? Is it just a shiny badge they put on their marketing brochures to look official, or does this actually move the financial needle?
Oh, it is the furthest thing from a marketing gimmick. It is arguably the most powerful sales lever they have.
Really? Just a certification?
Well, the SAFETY Act, which stands for the Support Anti-Terrorism by Fostering Effective Technologies Act, was passed by Congress after 9/11.
Okay.
The DHS evaluates security technologies, and if a product passes their rigorous classified testing protocols, it is officially certified as a qualified anti-terrorism technology. Evolv, having this designation for both their primary gate and their bag scanner, acts as a massive, legally binding liability shield.
A liability shield for Evolv or for the customer?
For both, but primarily for the customer. Think about the procurement process from the perspective of a risk-averse corporate board, right?
Right.
Or a massive public school district, or an international airport network.
They're terrified of lawsuits.
Exactly. If they're going to buy a new security system, their general counsel is going to be terrified. They're thinking, if we install this and a tragic act of terrorism happens on our property, the victims' families will sue us into oblivion, claiming our security tech was inadequate.
I see where this is going.
The SAFETY Act designation legally protects the customer from certain third-party liability claims arising out of an act of terrorism.
Wow.
Yeah. If a customer is using DHS-certified technology, the government has essentially declared that the customer implemented an officially approved state-of-the-art defense. The plaintiff's ability to sue the venue for negligence regarding the security equipment is drastically capped or eliminated.
It effectively de-risks the multi-million-dollar purchase decision.
Entirely.
So it takes the conversation away from, is this a neat piece of tech we should pilot at one gate, to the federal government has certified this as an anti-terrorism standard, and if we don't buy it, we are exposing ourselves to massive legal liability.
Exactly. It's a brutal but incredibly effective forcing function for a sales team to have in their back pocket.
Okay, I hear everything you were saying. The physical mechanics are sound. The 4.5 billion scans prove the AI is learning. The continuous flow solves the physical bottleneck. And the DHS has given them a legal shield that accelerates their land and expand motion.
The flywheel is spinning.
This flywheel is spinning faster than ever. Which leads me to a massive glaring question. I need to push back hard here.
Go for it.
If the underlying business is this strong, and if the technology is gaining maximum traction across all these verticals right now, why on earth is management choosing this exact moment to completely blow up their pricing model?
It seems counterintuitive, I know.
Right. If you have a winning formula, you don't rewrite the recipe. Why risk confusing Wall Street, alienating analysts, and creating this massive optical revenue slowdown we keep hinting at?
Your skepticism is exactly how the market initially reacted, and it brings us directly to the core tension of this entire investigation, the revenue shape paradox.
Okay, let's unpack that.
To understand why management is intentionally suppressing their immediate recognized revenue, we have to establish the current baseline. Let's look at the hard numbers from their Q1 2026 earnings report.
I've got them right here.
By every traditional SaaS and hardware metric, the technology is undeniably working. Evolv posted a massive 45% year-over-year revenue growth, hitting $46.3 million for the first quarter.
Which is an absolute blowout number.
Exactly. Even more importantly, their annual recurring revenue, their AR, hit $127.3 million, and the remaining performance obligation, the RPO, stood at a very healthy $299 million.
Let me jump in here for a quick translation for the listener.
Sure.
ARR is the holy grail metric. It's the predictable, recurring subscription money they know is coming in over the next 12 months based on active contracts.
Right.
And RPO, the remaining performance obligation, is basically their contracted backlog. It's money that customers have legally committed to paying Evolv over the full life of their multi-year contracts, but Evolv hasn't provided the service yet, so they can't claim it as revenue today.
Exactly right.
Having nearly $300 million in RPO means their future pipeline is incredibly secure. So again, with 45% top-line growth and a massive backlog, why fix what isn't broken?
Because management is playing a much longer, much more lucrative game. On July 1st, 2025, they initiated a deliberate, strategic restructuring of what they call their purchase plus subscription model.
Okay.
They are intentionally capping their immediate upfront cash infusion in order to capture a significantly larger, higher margin payoff over the lifespan of the customer. They are executing this pivot through two primary mechanical changes.
Let's hear them.
The first change is operational. They are bringing hardware fulfillment in-house. Historically, Evolv designed the tech but outsourced the actual manufacturing and shipping to third-party contract manufacturers. Those partners took a cut of the profit.
Which is pretty standard.
Right. But by taking direct control of the fulfillment, they immediately recapture that margin.
Huh?
But more importantly, they are pairing this insourcing with the rollout of their new Gen 2 Express systems.
And according to the transcripts, the Gen 2 system was completely re-engineered from the ground up for manufacturing efficiency. It has a 40% lower cost of goods sold, or COGS, compared to the Gen 1 systems.
Huge margin driver.
So, step 1 of the master plan. Make the physical box 40% cheaper to build and keep the middleman's profit for yourself. That is just sound supply chain management. I don't see why that would cause a revenue issue.
The operational efficiency doesn't cause the issue. The issue is caused by the second mechanism of their restructuring, which is a massive pricing mix shift.
A mix shift. Okay, explain that.
Evolv is fundamentally changing the ratio of how they charge the customer. They are significantly lowering the upfront cost of the physical hardware, and they are simultaneously increasing the ongoing, recurring price of the software and services subscription.
Okay, let's grab a napkin and do the math on a hypothetical deal so I can visualize this. Let's say a massive hospital network signs a standard 4-year contract for $100,000. How does this look to the hospital?
To the hospital procurement officer, nothing has changed. The total contract value is still exactly $100,000 over 4 years. It is perfectly price neutral to the customer, which means this shift doesn't create any friction in the sales cycle.
But for Evolv's accounting department, it changes everything.
Completely. Under GAAP accounting rules, specifically ASC 606 revenue recognition standards, when you sell physical hardware, you get to recognize that revenue almost immediately upon delivery.
Right.
But when you sell a software subscription, you have to recognize that revenue slowly, month by month, over the life of the 4-year contract.
So they defer it.
Yes. By drastically lowering the upfront hardware price, Evolv is starving themselves of that immediate revenue hit. For every purchase subscription unit sold in the second half of 2026, Evolv will recognize approximately 20% less upfront revenue compared to the exact same deal struck under the old model.
But in exchange, they gain 20% more in recurring software revenue over the next 48 months.
You've got it.
Okay, I have an analogy for this, and I want to make sure I'm not oversimplifying it. It is like an executive taking a massive pay cut on their initial cash signing bonus when they join a Fortune 500 company in exchange for a massive, guaranteed, compounding pension plan over the rest of their career.
That is an exceptionally accurate analogy.
On day one, your bank account looks much poorer. You might even look like you took a step backward financially. But if you look at your lifetime wealth trajectory, you are fundamentally much richer, and your income stream is infinitely more predictable.
And that exact dynamic is what creates the dreaded H2 2026 optical illusion.
The optical illusion. Let's dive deep into this specific comp headwind, because this is where the stock price volatility lives.
Yes, it is. If you look at the underlying health of the business, actual unit deployment growth is expected to exceed 25% in the second half of 2026. The sales team is closing deals faster than ever.
But because of the new accounting rules they self-imposed, taking that 20% haircut up front, the recognized top-line revenue growth will optically look like it has been cut in half.
Exactly. The headline algorithm on financial news sites will flash, Evolv revenue growth decelerates, even though they are shipping 25% more physical units.
That is brutal.
And to make this optical illusion even more painful, we have to look at what they are comparing themselves against. In the second half of 2025, before this restructuring fully took hold, Evolv landed a uniquely massive $4 million single contract win.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and under the old accounting rules, almost all of that $4 million was recognized instantly. So in H2 2026, they have to try and beat a massive, anomalous quarter while fighting with one hand tied behind their back due to their own deferred revenue rules.
It's a textbook comp headwind. So I'll ask the obvious question. If this is going to cause the headline numbers to look so ugly and potentially cause momentum algorithms to dump the stock, why on earth does the executive team love this shift so much? What is the prize at the end of the tunnel?
The prize is customer lifetime value, or CLTV. Management is entirely focused on the out years. When you trade low-margin, one-time hardware dollars today for high-margin, compounding software dollars tomorrow, you fundamentally alter the DNA of the business.
Right, you become a software company.
Exactly. You evolve from a hardware manufacturer into a SaaS platform. Consider what happens at the end of that standard 4-year contract. The customer's hardware is already paid for and installed. When it's time to sign a 2-year renewal, they're only renewing the software and services component.
And because Evolv deliberately shifted the pricing mix to make that software component much larger.
Evolv is now renewing a significantly larger ARR base at near 100% gross margins. They are maximizing the CLTV, compounding their predictable revenue, and permanently decoupling their financial growth from the sheer number of physical metal boxes they have to build each quarter.
Okay, I see the financial leverage. It's a brilliant pivot on a spreadsheet. But I have a major foundational problem with this entire thesis.
Hit me.
This entire bet-trading guaranteed upfront cash today for software subscriptions 4 years from now relies entirely on one massive, precarious assumption.
That the customers renew.
Yes, that these customers actually stick around. If a hospital signs a deal, pays the tiny upfront hardware fee, and then churns out and cancels the software subscription after a year or two because they don't like the product, Evolv loses the gamble. They took the upfront hit and never got the long-term pension.
That is the ultimate risk, yes.
So we need to stop looking at Evolv's internal financial models and perform a strict forensic audit of the actual customers. Are these land and expand unit economics actually working in the wild, or is Evolv just renting these accounts temporarily?
A completely fair challenge. To answer that, we have to look at the retention data. The two metrics that matter most in this scenario are net unit retention, NUR, and net revenue retention, NRR.
The gold standards of SaaS.
Right. Evolv's executive team has explicitly stated a target of maintaining greater than 100% for both of these metrics, and in Q1 2026, they successfully hit that target.
Let's define those for the listener who might be prepping for a meeting and needs these definitions crisp. Net unit retention simply means that among your existing customer base, you are adding more physical gates through expansions than you are losing from customers turning gates off.
Exactly.
And net revenue retention, or NRR, is the financial equivalent. And NRR over 100% means that if you take a cohort of customers from exactly 1 year ago, that exact same group of people is paying you more total money today than they were a year ago, even after accounting for anyone who canceled or downgraded.
Which means your existing base is a growth engine, not a leaky bucket.
And that growth engine is firing on all cylinders. A massive driver behind that greater than 100% NRR is their 32% expansion rate.
Which is huge.
Nearly 1/3 of Evolv's existing customers voluntarily return to purchase more units. But here is the statistic from the investor presentation that truly validates the land and expand model. Of that 1/3 who expand, an incredible 33% of them expand 3 or more times.
They buy a unit for the main entrance, realize it works, buy 3 more for the side entrances 6 months later, and then buy 10 more for their satellite facilities the following year.
That is institutional loyalty. You don't authorize a third expansion purchase order unless the technology is flawlessly solving your operational headaches. And looking at the data, a massive catalyst for this recent expansion boom seems to be the new eXpedite bag scanner we talked about earlier.
It is proving to be the ultimate upsell engine.
I mean, the data from their first year of availability is striking. Currently, 50% of all new unit bookings are coming from the existing customer base, heavily driven by eXpedite.
Yeah, the bag scanner was adopted by 6% of their entire existing customer base within its first 12 months on the market. Furthermore, 17% of all new customers are choosing to buy the eXpedite system immediately alongside the primary express gates.
Which fundamentally shifts the product, right?
Exactly. This isn't just about revenue. It fundamentally shifts Evolv's strategic positioning within the venue. By handling both the people and the bag seamlessly, Evolv transitions from being a single-point solution to becoming the unified, overarching security platform that handles the entire checkpoint ecosystem.
I want to ground this in a tangible reality because percentages can get abstract. I found a specific case study in the Q3 earnings supplement that perfectly illustrates this land and expand life cycle.
Oh, let's hear it.
Let's look at Spartanburg School District 5 in South Carolina.
Good example.
This district didn't just wake up one day and buy Evolv for every door in the county. They started back in 2022 with a classic, cautious pilot program. They had severe morning bottlenecks with their old metal detectors, and they deployed the initial Gen 1 Express systems at a few key high-traffic points.
Just testing the waters.
Right. They monitored the results. They realized the continuous flow actually worked without causing massive student delays, and they saw a dramatic drop in confiscated contraband. Based on that initial success, they authorized a massive expansion, scaling the technology across all 14 schools in the district.
And then they upgraded.
Yeah. When Evolv released the Gen 2 hardware, Spartanburg upgraded their entire fleet. And finally, when the eXpedite bag scanners were released, they upsold again, adding the X-ray tech to their checkpoints. They went from a skeptical pilot to a fully integrated, multi-generational platform customer in under 3 years.
That's the textbook land and expand.
But what fascinated me wasn't the procurement timeline, it was the survey data from the district itself. They surveyed the students and staff after the full deployment. 95% of respondents found the system easy to use.
Which is rare for security tech.
Very rare. But the critical number is this. Over half of the students explicitly reported feeling safer just knowing the Evolv system was active in their building. It completely changed the psychological climate of the schools. They weren't just buying hardware, they were buying peace of mind.
And that psychological climate shift is exactly what drives the pure momentum in the education vertical. When neighboring superintendents talk at regional conferences, the Spartanburg superintendent doesn't just say, the tech works. They say, our students feel safer, and the parents stop complaining about the morning lines.
That word of mouth is what drives the 100+% net revenue retention.
However, we have to look at the flip side of this coin.
Uh-oh. Here it comes.
Scaling this level of high-touch customer satisfaction introduces a profound systemic operational risk.
I'm so glad you brought this up because this is my biggest concern with their entire 2031 growth model. Let's be very clear about how Evolv operates. They don't just ship a pallet of sophisticated X-ray machines to a high school via FedEx, email them a PDF instruction manual, and wish them luck.
No, definitely not.
Evolv utilizes a very intensive, white-glove, high-touch service model. And critically, according to their operations materials, they use direct Evolv employees to provide this service. They aren't subcontracting the installation and tech support out to cheap third-party IT firms in the local area.
Right, they own the service end-to-end.
They are paying their own W-2 employees to travel to these sites to provide on-site Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 technical support. So here is my challenge to management. It is one thing to provide bespoke, white-glove service when you have 2,000 units deployed in a few concentrated states.
Sure, that's manageable.
But Evolv is aggressively targeting 10,000+ units deployed globally over the next few years. How on earth do they maintain a direct employee, heavy travel, white-glove service model without their operating expenses exploding and completely crushing their profit margins?
That is the multi-million-dollar question. And the executive team is deeply aware that margin compression is the enemy of a SaaS valuation.
It'll kill the stock.
It will. This concern leads us perfectly into analyzing their long-term capital allocation framework and what they call their Rule of 50 roadmap. They have rigorously modeled this expansion specifically to ensure the service model doesn't bankrupt them.
Okay, break down the roadmap.
Let's look at the financial destination they have drawn for 2031. Over the next 5 years, Evolv plans to aggressively scale and essentially triple their organic revenue to over $500 million.
Yeah, and to do that while proving to Wall Street that their white glove service isn't destroying profitability, they are aiming for this Rule of 50 metric.
Exactly.
Now, for the listener who might not live and breathe B2B software accounting, let's establish a baseline. In the traditional SaaS world, the Rule of 40 is considered the gold standard of a healthy, balanced company.
Right.
It means that your year-over-year revenue growth rate percentage plus your profit margin percentage equals 40. So if you were growing revenue at 20% a year and you have a 20% profit margin, you hit the Rule of 40. Evolv is pushing past that. They are targeting the Rule of 50.
Specifically, they are driving toward a sustained 25% compound annual growth rate in top-line revenue, combined with a 25% or greater adjusted EBITDA margin.
Adjusted EBITDA being their earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, essentially a measure of their core operating profitability.
Exactly. But if we connect this financial target back to your concern about the cost of scaling, we find a massive point of financial discipline in their strategy. Evolv is attempting this aggressive $500 million, 10,000 unit scale without taking on any additional debt.
Wait, really? No debt?
Zero. They are funding an incremental $20 million in research and development this year to protect the AI moat, and they are simultaneously funding a massive expansion in their sales and marketing and customer success teams to increase their geographical coverage.
And all of that is internal.
They're doing all of this entirely through internally generated cash flow.
I have to stop and highlight this because in the hardware-enabled technology space, this is incredibly rare. Usually when a company needs to manufacture, ship, and deploy 10,000 massive physical metal structures, it is insanely capital intensive.
Oh yeah, burns cash.
It requires massive debt facilities, syndicated loans, and burning through mountains of venture capital. You are constantly borrowing money just to build the inventory required to grow.
Which is why hardware startups often fail.
Exactly. But Evolv is pulling off a brilliant financial maneuver. If we tie this back to Section 2, where we discuss the revenue shape paradox, by shifting their pricing mix toward high-margin recurring software and by leveraging those new Gen 2 Express systems which cost 40% less to manufacture, they are unlocking massive internal cash flows.
It all connects.
They are essentially taking the cost savings from their hardware manufacturing efficiency and using it to self-fund their software and service growth.
No.
They aren't borrowing from a bank. They are funding their own aggressive expansion through operational discipline.
That is precisely the mechanism. They are taking the margin captured from the hardware insourcing and reinvesting it directly into the R&D and the human capital required to maintain that white-glove service capacity at a 10,000-unit scale. It is high-conviction, self-funded scaling.
That is impressive.
But to hit that $500 million revenue target by 2031, they can't just keep upselling Spartanburg School District. They need a massive runway of net new entryways.
Right. Where is the new growth coming from?
We need to look at the geographical and regulatory ingestion of this technology. Where are these next 5,000 units actually going to be physically installed, and what specific external forces are pushing hesitant buyers off the fence?
Well, let's talk about the total addressable market, because the numbers presented in their Investor Day materials are staggering. Globally, there are roughly 2.7 billion buildings. Evolv has run the analytics and identified approximately 700,000 highly addressable entryways that fit their specific target profile.
Meaning they have the necessary foot traffic, security needs, and budget to support a physical AI deployment.
Exactly.
And right now, their penetration of those 700,000 doors is heavily concentrated in a few specific high-urgency verticals. Education, as we have thoroughly explored, leads the pack with roughly 35% of their total business.
But the second fastest growing vertical is healthcare, right?
Yes. Healthcare currently sits at about 15% and it's expanding rapidly. The structural drivers in the healthcare vertical are incredibly urgent and they differ significantly from a high school.
How so?
According to industry data cited in their strategy overview, over 70% of all workplace violence incidents that require missed work occur in the healthcare and social assistance sectors. Emergency room nurses and hospital staff are facing unprecedented levels of physical risk.
Wow, 70%. So hospitals are desperate for robust security, but they face a unique life-or-death operational challenge. A hospital requires 247 frictionless open-door access.
You can't slow down the ER.
Right. If an ambulance arrives with a severe trauma patient, or a family rushes in with a child having an allergic reaction, you absolutely cannot delay their entry because they are stuck in a 5-minute security line emptying their pockets. The liability of delaying medical care is just as high as the liability of a security breach.
Exactly. Legacy metal detectors are physically incompatible with emergency medicine. Evolv's continuous flow architecture allows hospitals to maintain high-confidence weapon screening without impeding urgent, split-second medical care. That is why hospital networks are adopting this at such a rapid pace.
That makes perfect sense.
Then you have the sports and live entertainment vertical, which makes up another 15% of their base.
The stadiums.
Yeah. The motivation there is less about workplace violence and entirely about the speed of street-to-seat logistics. Post-pandemic, stadiums and massive concert venues are facing crippling game day labor shortages.
I can imagine.
They simply cannot find, hire, or afford enough trained security guards to manually wand 60,000 angry fans standing in the rain before kickoff.
It's an economic equation for a stadium. If it takes a fan 45 minutes to get through security, that is 45 minutes they are not inside the concourse, buying $12 beers and $60 sweatshirts. Evolv alleviates the labor crunch, reduces the required guard headcount, and gets the fans to the concession stands faster.
Win-win for the venue.
Yeah.
And what is fascinating to observe across all of these verticals, education, healthcare, and sports, is a structural tailwind that is fundamentally changing the nature of the purchase decision. We are witnessing a rapid shift from discretionary pilot programs to state-led, enterprise-wide mandates.
Mandates, really?
Yes. In the corporate workplace sector, which currently accounts for about 10% of Evolv's business, we are seeing rising duty of care pressures. Human resources departments and corporate boards are realizing that in a post-pandemic world, ensuring physical safety is a mandatory requirement for bringing employees back to the office.
It's table stakes now.
Exactly. This is forcing executives to standardize security technology across massive, multi-gate, multi-state corporate campuses.
And if we bring it back to that DHS SAFETY Act designation we discussed earlier, that acts as the ultimate mandate lever. When a technology is federally certified as a qualified anti-terrorism technology, it shifts the legal baseline.
It creates a new standard of care.
Right. If a corporate board or a massive hospital network experiences a tragedy and it is revealed in court that they chose not to implement DHS-certified technology to save a few bucks, their legal defense evaporates. The federal designation makes it very difficult from a fiduciary and liability standpoint to justify not implementing the platform.
That's a huge catalyst.
But looking at this massive runway of 700,000 addressable doors, I am staring at a glaring statistic in their financial modeling that we need to address. International revenue currently makes up a paltry 4% of their total business.
Yeah, that is a glaring number.
If the threat environment is persistent globally, if hospitals in London, stadiums in Tokyo, and corporate campuses in Frankfurt face the exact same labor shortages and security threats as they do in the US, why is Evolv almost entirely a domestic American company? Is this a failure of their international sales execution, or are we looking at a massive, completely underpenetrated growth runway for 2027 and beyond?
It is arguably their largest untapped lever, and management views it as the latter, a massive future runway.
So it's intentional.
Yes. The current lack of international penetration isn't necessarily a failure of execution. It is a function of highly focused, disciplined capital allocation.
Right.
Over the past 3 years, the executive team made the deliberate choice to dominate the domestic market first.
Capture the low-hanging fruit.
Exactly. The immediate demand, the available budgets, and the powerful pure momentum were highest in the United States, particularly within the U.S. education and healthcare systems. They focused their limited sales and marketing capital where it would yield the highest immediate ROI.
But 2031 is a big target.
It is. And as they transition toward their 2031 destination of $500 million in revenue, scaling that international go-to-market strategy is a stated primary objective. If they can successfully port their domestic land and expand playbook and adapt their algorithms to the nuanced regulatory and privacy environments of European and Asian markets, that 4% represents a phenomenal multi-year growth vector.
Okay, so we have audited the technology, we've broken down the accounting transition, and we've mapped out the addressable market. What does this all mean for the allocator looking at this company right now? Let's synthesize the investment case and deliver a final verdict.
Let's do it.
Can an enterprise that is acting as an AI-native security utility at current market valuations represent a structural, long-term value play?
The analytical verdict is yes, it can represent profound value, but that value is entirely contingent on their ability to successfully manage this current transition phase.
Messy middle.
Exactly. They're attempting to jump from being a hardware innovation story to a platform standard SaaS model. If they execute that jump, the financial leverage of a self-funding, high-margin, sticky subscription business is immense.
But there are risks.
Huge risks. We must be clear-eyed and objective about the execution risks. Based on this audit, I see 3 primary threats to this thesis that an investor must monitor.
What's the first one?
First, there is the immediate volatility in short-term comps. The public market is notoriously short-sighted. During the optical revenue slowdown in the second half of 2026, driven entirely by their deliberate revenue shape accounting transition, there is a massive risk that retail and institutional investors panic.
Right, they see the headline and sell.
Exactly. They may misinterpret the shift toward high-quality, deferred ARR as a fundamental catastrophic slowdown in customer demand.
The optical illusion. The numbers will look bad on the surface, and if management fails to communicate the underlying unit growth effectively, the stock could get punished unjustifiably.
Exactly. Communication is their biggest hurdle there. The second risk is pure operational scale.
The white glove service.
Yes. We spent a lot of time discussing their high-touch, direct employee service model. The sheer physical, logistical challenge of maintaining that pristine white glove service quality while simultaneously scaling the MLOps data engine and deploying field technicians across 10,000 plus global units is immense.
If they expand too fast and their service quality drops.
The Spartanburgs of the world won't renew. Net revenue retention will collapse, and the SaaS model breaks.
And the third risk?
Third, and finally, there is macro sensitivity. Despite the absolute urgency of physical safety, Evolv is extremely reliant on the budgets of K-12 public education and regional healthcare networks.
Oh, which are tied to government spending.
Exactly. In a severely deteriorating macroeconomic environment or a period of intense municipal budget cuts, those public and semi-public budgets could tighten significantly. That wouldn't necessarily cause churn, but it could severely delay the procurement cycles and push back their 2031 targets.
It all comes back to the summary analogy we've been building toward today. Evolv is trying to execute a paradigm shift. They want to become the invisible, intelligent safety standard for all high-traffic entryways.
The invisible utility.
Right. Think about the fire sprinklers above your head or the Wi-Fi network your phone is connected to right now. You expect them to be in every modern building you enter. You rely on them implicitly for your safety and connectivity.
But you don't think about them.
You never actually notice them, and you certainly don't stop and interact with them when you walk through the lobby. You only notice them when they are missing or broken. That invisible ubiquity is the 2031 destination for Evolv's physical AI.
If they achieve it, it represents a profound, permanent shift in how humanity manages and navigates public spaces.
And exploring that shift leaves us with a broader, somewhat provocative philosophical question to mull over long after this deep dive ends. We've established the incredible utility of this technology, but let's look 10 years down the road. If Evolv achieves its ultimate goal, if 700,000 public entryways across the globe are actively utilizing their physical AI, what happens to our baseline societal expectation of privacy?
That's a heavy question.
We're talking about a world where our specific three-dimensional physical signatures, the exact density of the laptop in our bag, the metallic composition of our keys, the shape of the medical device on our arm, are being continuously scanned, analyzed, cross-referenced, and categorized in fractions of a second by a massive, centralized machine learning network.
Every single day.
And this happens every single time we walk into a hospital to visit a sick relative, every time we enter a high school to watch a play, and every time we go to the grocery store. What does that level of continuous, invisible physical auditing mean for the concept of anonymity in the modern physical world?
It completely changes it.
Evolv is undeniably building a safer, frictionless future. But it is, by definition, a future where we are perpetually monitored by the environment itself. It's a fascinating trade-off between security and ambient surveillance.
It is the defining ethical and societal question of the next decade, and it will be fascinating to watch how regulatory bodies and the public react as this technology scales into ubiquity.
Risk defined, portfolio protected.